If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and today we're so honored to have Don Carli on with us. Don is a senior research fellow with the nonprofit Institute for Sustainable Communications. Welcome to Green is Good, Don.
Well, thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, Don, you are one of the great thought leaders here in the Green Revolution, and we're so honored to have you. But before we get into any questions about specifics and things of that such, what we always love to ask our guests, so our listeners can really understand how this whole sustainability revolution and how the Green Revolution came to be and who are the leaders. Talk a little bit about your journey, where you started, and how you ended up where you are today.
Sure. Well, I've been a strategy and marketing consultant to industry for about 25 years. Not really an environmentalist, but someone who looks at the factors that make value creation and the management of risk possible, focusing a great deal on industries having to do with printing and publishing and advertising, marketing, communications. About 12 years ago, I was managing a research project for the CEO of a company based in Europe who followed the research advice, frankly made a fortune, and then was frustrated with his opportunities to invest his fortune in a way that was sustainable. And at the time, there really were no alternatives available. So this is a Dr. Hans Zuliger, who was the chairman of a company called GreenIsGood. Together with another group of investors, they actually created the fund that came to be the partner with Dow Jones in creating the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. And it was Dr. Zuliger who introduced me to the concept of sustainability as a set of lenses that could be used for governing investment decisions and management decisions that could balance economic, environmental, and social performance to achieve superior returns, superior performance. And that was really the breakthrough for me, because I think that in many ways, the green revolution of the 70s, and I was a part of that, really failed to ever become a mainstream force for change. Always remained in the margins of 10 to 15% of the population caring about it. But for the majority of people, green is just not a motivating factor. Even Walmart has come to realize that people first and foremost focus on primary benefits, that whether that's utility or convenience or effectiveness. If it also happens to be green, for the majority of people, that may be the tiebreaker in a decision, but it's typically the green isn't the primary motivating factor. So this insight from Dr. Zuliger really helped me to understand how to frame sustainability in terms that people who make business decisions in particular can incorporate into their strategies and into their day-to-day operational decisions. And so I've continued over the past 12 years to focus on sustainability as it pertains to the supply chains of print and digital media, and helping not only business and government, but individuals understand how to make better informed decisions about the value and the impacts associated with print media, digital media, that they take for granted or misunderstand today.
That's, and so you wear two hats, Don, and I want our listeners to hear this because you wear two fascinating hats. One is you're the director of the Institute of Sustainable Communications, and I want our listeners to, if you have your iPad or laptop or desktop, if you're in front of your desktop, look up this great organization. It's sustainedcom.org. So it's sustanedcom.org. It's a great organization, and you're also the CEO of Nima Hunter, and NimaHunter.com is how our listeners can look you up over there. Talk a little bit about the two hats you wear and how you came to wear those hats.
Right. Well, I founded Nima Hunter in 1986, and it has been and is a marketing, research, business intelligence, and strategy consulting firm that has focused on primarily industries associated with printing, publishing, advertising, marketing, media, and communications. And in that role, I generally conducted marketing research, focus groups, surveys, interviews, and helped companies like Xerox, Adobe, Kodak, Hewlett-Packard, 3M, DuPont with strategies for the development and marketing of products and services related to communications. And for many years, it didn't focus on sustainability. It focused on how to develop new products that were more efficient, more effective, more productive. And it was, again, that insight that came from my work with Dr. Zuliger's organization that helped me see sustainability as a kind of a new IQ test for management. So the Institute was founded about 10 years ago, realizing that, for the most part, in North America, the commercial, printing, advertising, and marketing industries really had very low awareness of sustainability.
Got it.
There was no real commercial opportunity for Nima Hunter to be doing marketing research and so on associated with that, but there was a need.
Okay.
And, the proper role of a nonprofit is to serve society, to provide the public with benefit that isn't provided by government or business. So on that, the Institute was founded with a mission to raise awareness and to build capacity for the sustainable use of print and digital media.
Huh.
My role at the Institute is I manage a set of programs that primarily engages major advertisers, major publishers, and major media companies in helping them to understand how sustainability can be applied to their businesses in ways that create value and mitigate risk and help deliver the kinds of communications capabilities that brands require, consumers require, government requires in ways that are not exacting a toll on the environment or on society that isn't accounted for.
Can you give our listeners, without giving away, of course, any trade secrets, can you give our listeners some of the great specific examples of some of the wonderful brands you've helped here close the sustainability stakeholder loop?
Oh, absolutely. So, the Institute's worked, has a number of programs, and one of our programs has been to support publishers and advertisers and media companies that are trying to understand what the environmental impacts of their supply chains are. And along those lines, not long ago, we were engaged to help The Economist magazine understand the carbon footprint of producing The Economist magazine in North America.
Wow.
And in other cases, we've worked with the investment banking firm Piper Jaffray, helping them to understand the carbon footprint, environmental impacts associated with all of the printing and marketing communications that they undertake in North America. In many cases, these projects are undertaken providing the organization with confidentiality because they really don't know what they don't know. They're, in some cases, almost afraid to find out what the answer to the question is. So we provide them with an ability to do that in a proprietary manner. But generally, we request of them that they share some aspect of what has been discovered with the public. And in that regard, the Piper Jaffray allowed us to publish the top-line findings from it. It can be quite striking. The average corporation today spends about 8.5% of every dollar they earn in revenue on advertising.
Wow.
And collectively, advertising, just for paid media, whether it be TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, mobile advertising, represents in excess of $500 billion a year in economic activity.
Wow.
And those purchases spawn trillions of dollars of gross domestic product, of economic activity. And for every dollar of economic activity, there are a set of environmental impacts that can be estimated. Our objective over time through the Institute is working with brands and publishers and media companies to not simply estimate those, but to measure them. And through measurement, to proactively eliminate or reduce those impacts to the point where the media that advertisers and brands and government depend on will be truly sustainable.
You know, obviously, when you set up Nima Hunter in 1986 and then became the director of the Institute of Sustainable Communications, in many ways, you were very early in the curve. But as we speak with you today, as Mike and I are speaking with you, Mike's on his laptop, I'm on my iPad, and we're looking at your great website. I've recently canceled so many of my subscriptions and read so much of my stuff now on my iPad. And when I first met you in person, Don, you were you're not only a businessman and an ecopreneur, but you're also a thought leader here in the sustainability and green revolution. And I want to share with our listeners two great articles or two great pieces that you've put out in the last couple of years. One was on GreenBiz. I remember this article very well. It's Going Paperless, Not as Green as You May Think. And then also your work with PBS, Is Digital Media Worse for the Environment Than Print? Can you share with our listeners some of the thought-provoking issues that you raised in both of these pieces and where we are today in this whole process?
Yeah, I mean, the basic premise is that, there's a hidden life that most people are either unaware of or just have a set of misperceptions about behind every business activity. So all media, regardless of whether it's print or digital, are associated with the extraction of metals and minerals and other resources from either a farm, a field, a mine, or a well. They all require logistics, transport, shipments of those raw materials for primary manufacturing, and those primary manufacturing steps typically involve uses of energy, and most of which in the United States is coal-powered energy. And in their manufacture then and in their use, they are also uses of energy and water and generation of waste, which may or may not result in an impact on quality of life or the quality of the environment or biodiversity. And in these articles, I was trying to draw attention to a very common dilemma that is presented to consumers. In some cases, it's presented knowingly by groups who, frankly, have a reason for not wanting print to be used and wanting them to shift to digital alternatives because it's very good for their business. I mean, it goes straight to their bottom line as profit. In other cases, it's not necessarily malicious intent, but in many cases, almost a virtuous intent. They really, truly believe that they're doing something good by promoting an alternative to print media. And I think we often fail to understand that those appeals are very emotional.
Right.
We're as a species, we tend to have created a sort of, there's a $10 word for it. It's called anthropomorphization, where you're basically making a thing human-like. And trees, we've anthropomorphized trees. We kind of treat trees like people. We think of them as members of our family in some cases. And so when you say it's going to kill a tree, it's almost a very personal way of describing, something bad that's going to happen. And frankly, if you present the consumer with the fact that using a printed medium is going to kill trees, they feel bad. I mean, they just feel bad. Nobody wants to feel bad. No one wants to feel as though they're killing a tree. But when you set that tension up in a person, you can also present them with a quick way to resolve that conflict by saying, you can always go digital, and that'll resolve your conflict. You won't be killing a tree.
Right.
Now, that argument is not necessarily supported by the evidence of, what sustainably harvested wood fiber and properly recovered and recycled print media, in fact, do. They don't necessarily kill trees any more than, having corn on the cob kills corn. I mean,
right.
It's a crop.
Right.
It's 4 o'clock. And wood is a resource that is renewable. On the other hand, the articles are really saying, if you care about trees and deforestation, it's an important thing. We do need renewed forests. We do need to be concerned about deforestation globally. And while it is a problem in some parts of the world, in Indonesia and Brazil, frankly, it's not a problem in the United States. We have more forest cover in the United States today than we did 100 years ago. And that's primarily because the forest products industry, which has had its problems over the years, has improved dramatically in its focus on sustainable forestry, making sure that biodiversity is preserved, and for every tree harvested, 2 or 3 are planted. All right, so we've got to be differentiating between all print and print that comes from wood derived from sustainably managed forests and that is recovered and recycled. We have a very high recovery rate for paper, waste paper in the United States.
Well, Don, it sounds like really the emotional appeal is also very simplistic in this argument. So it's really incumbent upon each of us to get past the bumper sticker mentality and the feel good and just say, okay, great, I hear what you're saying,
right?
But let's think this through a little bit.
And in fact, what I drew attention to is that we do have a problem with deforestation in the United States in a very specific region of the country. Ironically, the primary driver for that deforestation is not papermaking or the production of print media or yellow pages or whatever.
Right.
It's the extraction of coal that's driving deforestation, in particular in West Virginia.
I had no idea.
Where hundreds of square miles of pristine forests have been permanently eliminated, and where thousands of rivers and streams have been filled in with the tops of mountains that have been blown off to extract coal inexpensively to power, at present, about 25% of all of the coal-fired power comes from West Virginia.
So in other words, we're getting rid of a sustainable resource to mine a finite resource.
And to burn it, and not only create destroy those headwater streams that are feeding the Mississippi and the Ohio, and all of the various newts and other biodiversity resources that were unique to those regions, and flattening those mountains and destroying communities. Frankly, it's a very serious issue, but we may not quite realize that in addition to the energy that's being used to power those data centers that are hosting the pages that have now migrated from print to digital, there's all of the downstream waste, which the infrastructure required for digital media are producing. Something that I know John is very, very familiar with.
Right.
E-waste is, in fact, electronic waste is, in fact, a very significant part of our solid waste landfill problem right now. And yet it's not thought of in relation to the iPhone, the iPad, the BlackBerry, the laptop that people are using. They aren't thinking about the full life cycle, how much energy and materials required to make that digital media alternative to print media possible, and what the impacts in terms of toxic waste and emissions are in the process.
Right.
So that's what the article was about, and in fact, it was interesting. I was quite gratified that the Newhouse School of Journalism nominated it for Best Single Article,
wow.
And in the public service this year for their annual Mirror Awards.
Nice. Congratulations. And deservingly so, because it really was very thought-provoking and made us think differently about everything, not just the same, in the legacy ways that we have been all programmed to think. Don, we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to cover a couple other issues because the breadth of your experience and the visibility that you have is so wide. I want you to share some of that information and knowledge with our listeners, who, if you've just joined us right now, we've got Don Carli on with us, and Don is the director of the Institute of Sustainable Communications, besides being the CEO of Nima Hunter, and you can find him at nimahunter.com and sustainedcom.org. Don, how about some of the issues with regards, you talked about how big advertising is and how we are in so many ways still doing offline advertising, but digital advertising. What we've seen since 1998 and the rise of Google has been sort of breathless. Talk a little bit about what you do with regards to more sustainable supply chains in the media industry and the impacts that you see coming now and down the road.
Sure. Well, I mean, the most important thing to realize is that integrated media, all of the studies that have been done recently and over recent years show that appropriately integrated media is far more effective than the use of any single medium. And for many reasons, we will continue to need not only digital media. There are important advantages to some aspects of digital media, but combined with print media, whether it be out of home, whether it be newspaper, magazine, direct response, etc. The challenge is to make sure that the energy that was used to produce and distribute the media, whether it's print or digital, is as efficiently used as possible. In other words, how can we communicate with less energy? And then, secondly, how can we ensure that the energy, to the greatest degree possible, is renewable as opposed to non-renewable? And we ask the same things about the materials that are employed and the amount of water that's employed and polluted in the process. So the first and most important thing is to get advertisers and the media companies to identify and quantify those quantities of energy and materials and waste that are associated with what they sell. That's not a simple task, but and in part it's because the industry is so complex and so diverse. But it is something we're making progress with. The Institute's been working with the Association of National Advertisers, the American Association of Advertising Agencies, and in Europe with organizations like the Festival of Media and others to bring major advertisers together, brands that spend billions of dollars a year, to find a constructive way to encourage media companies to disclose what the carbon, the water, and other aspects of their products are, from their product life cycles are. Consumers don't really need to know it in making a decision about whether to buy this magazine or that, or whether to use, online or offline. But ultimately, it will matter that the sources of energy are reliable, are renewable, are less subject to interruption, whether it be through the vagaries of markets or whether it be to natural disasters, and that the materials they rely on will be available and affordable at prices that people are willing to pay. Because if corporations can't effectively advertise and market their products, and in effect, there will be no growth in our economy. And without growth in our economy, we really can't have the sustainability and quality of life that we all seek.
I agree. We're down to the last 2 minutes, Don, and this is open for you to share with our listeners. And our listeners are not only national, but they're international. Because of the beautiful nature of the technology revolution and the iTunes network, we get downloads, literally thousands every week from China, Korea, France, Brazil, England, all around the world. Please share with our listeners some of your final thoughts on what you're doing, both at director of Institute of Sustainable Communications, and also your great work as the CEO of Nima Hunter.
Well, with Nima Hunter, I continue to work with leading producers of technology for digital printing, for example. The Xeroxes, the Hewlett-Packard, the Kodaks, the Konica Minoltas, etc., to help them understand how sustainability can become a value aspect of their products and their services. How to communicate to their markets. And, I encourage consumers and businesses that are buying technologies to ask those manufacturers, tell me, how much energy does it take to create a page? How much energy does it take to create a website? What kind of energy is used? How much material is required? Is the material renewable? Have you conducted life cycle analysis, and is that published? life cycle analysis is really where I think the Institute and Nima Hunter have common ground. We work with companies to employ the disciplines of life cycle analysis based on standards to understand those flows of energy, materials, and waste and so on associated with products, and to allow businesses to present the results of that to consumers in a meaningful way. An example being the work that the Walmart Sustainability Consortium is doing now to come up with a sustainability index or label on every product, so that a consumer can understand this is a product that not only is at a price I can afford to pay, but doesn't have an impact on the environment or on society that I am unwittingly paying for.
Right.
Because it's kind of, those are the hidden impacts that I think we have to become increasingly sensitive to. The Institute's got other programs that it works on with students. We help to provide scholarships to inner city youth in helping them to pay for their college educations. We have mentoring and internship programs with young leaders in the marketing and advertising and communications fields. We work with companies on their marketing and promotion programs, helping them. For example, our Eco 360 T-shirt program helps them understand how a common communication product, a T-shirt, can be re-engineered to be made of 100% recovered and recycled material, printed digitally without water, manufactured locally, paying people a living wage in the United States, and having all the proceeds go to support college scholarships for inner city kids.
Very cool.
At the same time, being beautiful, feeling good, and being able to carry a marketing message.
Well, Don, you're a delight to have on, and we wish we could spend more time with you today. You're always welcome to come back and continue great success and all the great work you're doing. Again, for our listeners out there who'd like to contact Don and see some more of his great work, you can look him up at the Institute of Sustainable Communications at sustainedcom.org or at nimahunter.com. Don Carli, you are an inspirational, sustainable media leader and truly living proof that green is good.